I was like looking up at a hospital room ceiling, going, why am I here? What brought me here? Right. So I was struck. There's a guy going 55 miles an hour, and I was hit out of nowhere. And sometimes we never know what can happen in our daily life. And I talk about the interactions that we have with those around us and the ones, that we're presented with. It's so important that we really put our best selves forward every single day of every single moment, because we never know where life is going to take us.
Hello, and welcome to Grief, Gratitude, and the Gray in Between podcast. This podcast is about exploring the grief that occurs at different times in our lives in which we have had major changes and transitions that literally shake us to the core and make us experience grief. I created this podcast for people to feel a little less hopeless and alone in their own grief process as they hear the stories of others who have had similar journeys. I'm Kendra Rinaldi, your host. Now, let's dive right into today's episode. Welcome to our podcast. Today, we have Naomi Riley. She is an influential, motivational speaker. She had her own health challenges that led her to this journey. And I cannot wait to learn more about her journey. I read one of her ebooks and I cannot wait to hear how she got to where she is now. So welcome, Naomi.
Thanks so much, Kendra. I'm so excited to be here and talk with you just openly and honestly about my journey.
And it's been a journey then. So let's start first with, where did you grow up? Where you said you're in
Yeah.
Michigan now, but where did you grow up?
Yeah, so I'm a hometown girl. I did grow up in the Grand Rapids, Michigan area. And my journey started out when I was actually young. So when I was a child, I was diagnosed with a illness called JRA, and it's juvenile rheumatoid arthritis. And as a child, when you're diagnosed with an illness, you can struggle quite a bit. My journey began at the age of 7 when I was diagnosed. My parents were told early on that I would not be able to walk after the age of 18. I talk a lot about the brain and what it does when it's in the crisis mode. And, when I look back to my own youth, I'm like, man, I was in crisis mode when I was young, because I was like, no, I'm going to fight to maintain mobility. And just for those of you that don't know, juvenile rheumatoid arthritis is different when it's in kids. So kids, when they're growing, their joints are affected, and they can experience growth deformities. They can experience their joints freeze, and they will lack the mobility. And back in my day, there weren't a lot of regimens for us to kind of get ourselves feeling better and, stop the progression. And so mine was a lot of trial and error, and it was a struggle, but God prevailed, and I was able to make it past 18 and make it past 25 and make it past 27 and keep continuing on. And I did, lots of, home remedies, aqua therapies, and all these different things just to keep my mobility. And, I've always had a closeness with God, let's just say that. Sometimes it was just like, why did you do this to me? And put me through this. And then other times it's like, oh, thank you for blessing me, right? And so that gives you a little bit of a background of who I am. I was married when I was 22. I had three
Oh, yeah.
beautiful kids. They're now in their 20s, and they're out living their best lives. And I'm very blessed now to look back at my own life saying, okay, I'm still going. I'm still surviving, right?
Yes, yes. No, that is so inspiring. Now, what kept you going at the young age, you're young, you have this diagnosis, right? You're living with it. You pretty much don't know anything
Mhm.
different than what your life is because you have a
Yeah.
diagnosis since you're little. How did you and how did your parents help you navigate the emotions that come up from being like, wait, I can't do the same thing that my friends do, or
Mm.
and how you're feeling? How did you navigate your emotions as a child?
Wow, that's a great question. Um, oh gosh, as children, we go through so much. I can vividly remember going back to some days where I was bullied or I was, discriminated against. I walked with a small limp, but you really couldn't see the differences in me. It was just kids being kids and not knowing. I remember one day, like this one kid was making fun of me, and I just was so upset and so angry. Of course, then the girl comes in me, and we girls kind of tend to act a little bit more emotional. And so I came home
We
and I
do.
just would cry my eyes out and, ask God, like, why am I different? Why was I made this way? And this was back in the, 70s and the 80s. And I remember my dad, he would come up to my room and pray with me. And just because at times I would be such in a really bad emotional state that I would be like, God, just take me home. I don't want to be here anymore. People are going to be mean to me and not want to, because as kids, it's really difficult to understand that discrimination against,
Mhm.
people with disabilities and, anyone that's different. I know nowadays we're really taught that we're not supposed to be bullying or anything like that. And I'm really big proponent of that. And, I think the one thing that got me through it was my closeness with God my parents brought me up in the church and always had, Naomi, scripture tells us this and we need to, put God first and, say your prayers to him. Tell him exactly how you're feeling. How can you get forward the next day? And so then, the strong will in me, I was the firstborn.
I
I
was
would
just
be
gonna
like,
ask
oh yeah,
how many kids were you? You're the
there was
oldest
only
of.
2.
Okay, a few.
There was
Okay.
only 2 of us, but I was very strong-willed and determined, I think from a young age that I was not gonna be this, and I was not gonna do this, and I was just gonna move forward. And so, I think that, really, of course, got me through that. The emotional, roller coaster that we can go on as girls, as females. I mean, we all do it, the more that
Yes.
we can balance ourselves out, the easier it is, right?
Absolutely. Now, Naomi, so this was your battle then with juvenile arthritis. Now, what led to your brain injury then? Was it
Yeah.
part of that or was it something
Mm-mm.
completely different?
Yeah,
And tell us
yep.
then that story.
Yeah. So, 2017, I was mom. I had dropped my, high schoolers off at school and a off at dog daycare. And I was headed back and I was struck by a distracted driver. And I was like, oh, seriously, like it wasn't like seriously, but I was like looking up at a hospital room ceiling, going, why am I here? What brought me here? Right. So I was struck. There's a guy going 55 miles an hour, and I was hit out of nowhere. And sometimes we never know what can happen in our daily life. And I talk about the interactions that we have with those around us and the ones, that we're presented with. It's so important that we really like put our best selves forward every single day of every single moment because we never know where life is going to take us. It's such a journey. And yeah, so I had a brain injury and several other injuries, and I'd spend the next 9.5 months in and out of a rehab hospital here in the Grand Rapids area. And I had to learn my new normal. All my neural pathways had to be redeveloped. I had to learn how to walk, talk, comprehend everything, and just really like focus in on the things I needed to focus in on to move forward. Now, it was so frustrating for me. Again, I felt I went back to my little girl days of saying, God, why did you leave me here? I think that we can all get struck with so much of why did this happen, or why is this the way it is, whether we lose someone in life, or we're going through a divorce, or a breakup in a relationship. There's a lot of unanswered questions that we have, right? And sometimes those questions are not ever going to be answered.
Mhm.
Sometimes bad things happen to good people, and there's not a whole lot of things that we can do about it. Some say it's the universe telling us this, that, and the other. I truly believe in my heart, no, I don't think it's the universe telling us, this. I think that, the way that our culture is anymore is that we can't just allow, certain things to take over, our life. And the the vehicles here on in our world now, right? We There's so many, and we've kind of let distracted driving become a norm in society. And there's so many other things like discrimination and bullying and cyberbullying and all of these things, right? And they take a wicked turn in our culture, and sometimes, you know, just bad things happen to good people, and there's not a whole lot that we can do about that. So, yeah, I had a brain injury, and it sucked. It really
Oh,
sucked.
no, and 9.5 months
Mhm.
of that recovery, you had how many kids? 2 kids you said at that time?
Yeah, so I have 3 kids. Yeah,
3,
2 of
okay.
them were in high school, and then my oldest, he had already graduated high school,
Okay,
but it
got it,
was
got it.
really difficult. I
Yeah.
had, lots of friends support and parents support during that time because I couldn't do anything. And, I had to have a lot of forgiveness in my heart because we can get angry over things that happen to us. And we
Mhm.
can kind of live in this state of the woe is me. It's never going to get better. And why did this happen? And, there's that energy level that is just, I'm just going to go through life, and it's just what it is. It is what it is. Yep. And so I could have lived in that state for the rest of my life, but I chose to not, right? And I think we all have a choice every single day that we wake up, that we can either choose to live in that state of, okay, this happened to me and I am just going to be here, or I'm going to choose and I'm going to rise. I'm going to choose to figure out ways that my life can improve, that I can do things again, and know that this happens, but I know that I'm going to be a difference maker moving forward, and that's so key, right? Like, those are things that we are supposed to do as humans, right? Just to evolve and to
Yes.
get better.
Learn. To
Yeah.
learn and keep growing, and hence the title of this podcast with grief, gratitude, but in the gray in between. And it's the choosing, making that choice to
Mhm.
move forward, and choice to live in gratitude, and choice to live in hope, and a choice to live in faith in order to move forward. Because something happens, now what? You have a choice. You could stay there
Right.
in the woe is me, like you said, or make a choice. Now, there's, of course, emotions. We're going to talk about this
Oh.
too. There's emotion. They just come, right? They're
Mm.
going to come. You can't control how they're going to come and show up. What you can control is how you're going to address them as they come in, like a visitor knocking at your door. Your kitchen's a mess. You you haven't showered.
Yeah.
A knock on the door, and you're like, up. That's basically how emotions or grief or or anxiety, we're going to talk about anxiety as well, show up. So you had this injury then 2017. Then at what point did you start shifting? Were you already a motivational speaker because of your juvenile or growing
No.
up? Okay, so how did you become then this
Yeah,
motivational speaker after that? And what was that journey from one point
sure.
A to point B?
So let me tell you, I was a theater coach for 10 years prior to my
I'm
accident.
a theater major. I studied
Oh, I so
theater.
love that. I
That's
love
my
that. I love that.
bachelor's. That's my
Yes.
bachelor's.
So kids and theater are my jam. So I was a theater coach for kids theater for a long time, and I just have always loved the stage. And so, no, after my accident, though, everything had to be completely redone, right? And I didn't have a choice. Like, I had to, again, learn how to maneuver my whole life again. And I just started using my story for the good to help others understand, like, hey, we kind of need to watch out for some things that are going on in society. And, I want to share what happened to me and my story so that maybe it might help you to make wiser decisions to, watch what you're doing on the roads or even like the interactions that you have with others. And just really, share with kids. It's important. And so, yes, the motivational speaker that did not come about until way after. In fact, last year, I was, kind of like given a choice. You're going to get on stage. And I was scared to death. I was so scared because I had kind of taken the back road, right? Like I'm a researcher and developer, and I don't really like being on stage and being that, voice anymore.
Oh, okay. So you
And
not
so
anymore. So it changed, it shifted.
well, no, I
Oh,
will
okay.
do it. So here's the thing.
Okay.
So I will go out and do it and for the greater good, I will do it. But it wasn't like anything like I'm gonna just do this. So, but I was forced to get on stage last year and I was trembling because my tremors come back so bad sometimes when I'm on stage and I'm scared. And I think we all go through that, right? When we have a little bit of fear in us, we're like, oh, how am I gonna get through this? And so I was forced to get on stage and then I felt okay. Like I had a little bit of tremors the first time. The second time my tremors were a lot less. And then the third time they were hardly there. The fourth time they were not there. And so I'm like, oh, I think I can do this again. This is not that big of a deal. And so then I'm like, okay, I can keep going. I can keep moving forward and share my story that way.
Did you start then first doing talks in front of children or in front of
No.
adults? Who was your first audience?
Yeah, so it's always been adults since after my accident. And, and I always look at them and I always say, normally my audience is a bunch of children. And so I'm just going to imagine you're a bunch of children right now because they're so forgiving. They're so like amazing and just vulnerable and they're wonderful people and they're like and if I make a mistake they just sit there and laugh and then they like get it so and so no, it's always been adults and everyone always, really enjoys, when I come out and I be very, very honest. And that, I always say if I get lost in my tracks, I'll get right back on, but just give me a minute. I might pause for a minute, but that's only because, I've kind of had some brain stuff going on and they get it, they completely get it. So
Well, even some of us that have not had brain stuff going on get some brain farts, as I call them, and you're like, "Wait, where was I?"
yes,
So
right.
take us into that. How is it that your brain now does the connections? Like, so after then your brain injury, how different is it that you navigate then
Yeah.
your
Yeah, yeah,
process?
yeah. It's so different. Um, Prior to my accident, I was not completely alert, I would say. I was living in this one like set of ways on how my brain had to operate. And my neural pathways were redeveloped. And let me tell you, I had to understand complete sentences, complete stories, what went together, how it went together, all of these different things. And it made me so alert. And I talk a lot about how anyone's brains can be rewired to think differently and to really like hone in on the things that you need to hone in on to move your business or whatever it is forward, whatever you're looking to do You can rewire your brain to move it forward. Let me give you an example. So, I was a mom at, just with my 3 kids. I worked my normal job. I did what I was supposed to do, right? As moms, busy moms, we do that. We just kind of keep up with the daily norm and oh, our kids come first and we kind of just sit back and we let them and that's our job, right? We want to raise our kids the right way. And I always thought like this was where I was supposed to be. And I did this for 20 years and I loved it. And I loved raising my kids. However, after my accident happened, my neural pathways were so much redeveloped. They were so redeveloped. And so I just became a constant researcher and studier and I had to know like reasons why things were the way that they were. And I was so against distracted driving at that time, right? I was so angry, of course, someone was driving on the road, they could just like take away a portion of me that can never be returned, but they can move on with their daily life. I mean, that was a very, very big struggle for me. And so just moving forward, I started doing a lot of research and speaking with first responders and judges and ENTs and um, just so many professionals that are there right on the scenes, right? And I wanted to know what can we do to help our youth kind of navigate through all these issues that we've been seeing in society. And so, just to give you an example, this research project has lasted about 7 years. And it's so cool because now I have amazing teams of people that are behind me saying, we want to see this change happen too. So I didn't really talk about this movement, this thing that we've got going on over here, but it's called TextPledge.us. It's a nonprofit program, and it's for profit too. But what it does is it takes youth through 10 of our country's biggest dilemmas, from distracted driving, discrimination, acts of violence, bullying, and cyberbullying. But then we ask students to raise their mental health, like understand what is going on all around them. How can they protect themselves and others just a little bit more? And then we added in the environment and animal rights because we feel that it is so important to really show students, our country is needing a lot of help. And so we did that, but then we also, I'm like I said, I'm a constant researcher and developer, so I had to figure out a way we can help these students just a little bit more. So what you're going to see if you download the Text Pledge app, you're going to see the nation's first smart crisis card. So I look at it as when you were a kid, where you babysat or whatever. And the moms would always show when you open the cupboard door, here's a list of all the emergency numbers that you might need in a crisis situation, from poison control to, 911 and your 988, but then a lot of different numbers that you might need in a crisis situation, the Red Cross, United Way, all of those things. And so they're all on the Text Pledge app for students. And so that was the second part of our, research project. And then the third was we are constantly updating the national statistics. We're showing students, hey, this is where distracted driving's at. Hey, this is where hate crimes and all that are at. Here's where this is at. It's a very, very safe space for students. And we develop curriculums and all these different things. And it's just such a cool project now that it's 7.5 years later and we're still moving forward. And it's so cool. But yeah, so, I think that one thing that we can always do is be always learning and evolving. It keeps us
Mm.
humble and it really like helps us understand like we're just part of this one little thing in our world, and if we can make a difference in somebody's life, why not do it, right?
Why not? And you've made quite a difference. That's a huge endeavor of, taking on
Hmm.
with the text pledge app.
Yeah.
That's a huge endeavor. Now, aside then from that, you've also then
Hmm.
created you're a motivational speaker, or now you have a ton of ebooks,
Yeah.
the one that I was reading was Overcoming Anxiety. So that's one
Yeah.
of many that you have. So which
Mhm.
one was your first one that you wrote? And when did that
Oh
happen? Because
gosh.
then it's like you
Yeah.
do you remember?
Yeah. Self-love was the one.
Self-love. Okay.
Yeah.
So
We have to.
self-love. Yeah, like that.
Yeah.
So that was that one of your tools in this journey of recovering yourself.
Mhm.
That is, if I'm not mistaken, in your anxiety one, you have some steps regarding anxiety.
Mhm.
Isn't self-love in there? Isn't
Yeah,
self-love one of your steps?
yes,
It's
yes,
self
of
some yes, it
course.
is one of your yes, it's
Yes.
one of your steps. So if that was one of your books, how did that then play a part in your journey? Because there is grief when you've had an
Oh
injury and when you've
gosh.
lived with an illness because things
So
do not look the
much.
same. It's a huge transition. So how did that
Mhm.
play a part in your journey?
Yeah, so, you have to accept the things that we cannot change, right? That's one of the biggest verses, or I think the things that I've relied on most as possible. No one's going to be perfect. We don't live in a perfect society, and yes, we can strive to do our very, very best and look our very, very best and present ourselves in that way. But we have to accept the things that we, just can't change and be okay with that, right? We're all unique in various ways. And, our creator made us that way. He made us that way so that we can share our voice and share our differences and share our story with others. Whenever I speak with someone or I talk, I always remind everyone your story is probably someone else's journey. And it's your job to share what you went through. Now do it in a safe environment, a safe space, but always, keep sharing who you are. It's a way that we need to, evolve. It's so important. So I had to, really look at myself and just say, okay, well, here we go. Let's move forward now. And by baby steps, it happened, baby steps, lots and lots of baby steps. What were the things that I could do today to move forward? I had to eliminate any kind of distraction that I had to focus on my goals, whether it be understanding a story, whether it be understanding a sentence, whether it be not like allowing myself to have tremors, and I would become so frustrated with myself when I couldn't remember something someone told me just 10 minutes earlier. And I think as adults, when we get older too, that's really difficult. So what are the things that you need to do to make sure that you are on top of it? Make yourself notes. If you need to do that, make yourself notes. We've got these brilliant things called cell phones, and we've
Oh
got
yeah.
the note takers on our things.
No,
I'm constantly making notes.
I have a friend that she any reminder, she sets an actual like alarm, like full on alarm and
Yes.
with the title of every single thing is like, don't forget to so not just like the
Yeah.
reminder on the phone, it's like full on alarm with the things she needs to remember to do.
Right.
So yeah,
It's
so
so important,
so
right,
many
Kendra?
tools. Yes, very important. Yeah, no, it's like we really do go through we have so many things on our plate sometimes and taking care of
Mhm.
others that it is easy to forget to take care of ourselves. And that
Yeah.
does start kind of adding up into then how we feel. So in your book regarding anxiety, because that anxiety is one of these emotions that a lot of us struggle with, what was your journey and your relationship with anxiety that then you developed this way of kind of coping with it, moving your
Yeah.
being physical, moving your body. There's all these different steps. So what was this
Yeah.
relationship you had with anxiety that
Anx
led you to this?
yeah, so anxiety is one of the most hardest things that we can get through at any age in our life. It's constant, right? As we learn and we grow, I think just even from being a young student to now, a middle-aged adult, we can still house anxiety. What can we do to avoid it or eliminate that? Um, One of the things that I always recommend is to practice gratitude. Set yourself up for the day where you wake up and you're just so, so grateful to be here. And you thank your creator. Spend like 2 to 3 minutes, thanking your creator or God for the things that you have here and now in your life. It's going to set your mindset off for a really, really great day. Another thing that you can do to eliminate anxiety is to make yourself those notes. What can I do today to help my relieve my anxiety? That's really, really huge, because a lot of the times we can feel overwhelmed. We can feel like the world is caving in on us and we're not knowing what to do. And then sometimes we get into that freezing type mode. Well, I just don't know what I'm going to do. So they just, I'm just giving up. That's not healthy. That's not one of the things that, we're supposed to do. So we need to make our list. How can I get through this? Or what can I do to eliminate this anxiety that I'm having? Okay. Another thing is exercise. Get out there, do some breath work. We're not supposed to be sitting by our desk or in front of our cell phone all the time. You know, um, it's not a good thing. Another thing that we can do is like drop the cell phone for a while, turn it off, go walk in nature. I think a lot of us can do that comparisonitis where we're seeing everyone else on social media or we're seeing all these great people living out their best life. But that's just one of their, that's just a very, very small portion of who they say they are. And I think that that can give us anxiety. There's so many things that can give us anxiety. But if we just take a step back and we say, okay, what do I want to do? How do I want to get there? How am I going to let this anxiety, how am I going to get rid of it? And how am I going to move forward? It's going to help you. It's going to set your mindset off for a really, really good path.
Those are such practical tips. And you have little tips of like, okay, like there was one, hold on, if I can find the page, it was like, if you're
Yeah.
overthinking, hold on, if you're
Hmm.
overthinking, right, hold on. I liked the little, it was really easy. Let me look for it. Because unless you remember it off the top of your
I
head, but it was
don't, to be
okay,
honest. I
okay, okay.
don't.
Let me see. I like okay. So it was like a daily reminder. So if you're overthinking, write. If you're
Yes.
anxious, move. If you're tired, read.
Yes.
Confused, walk. If you're sad, exercise. It was like, okay, okay, that's a good it's like if you're overthinking, if you write it down, it's out of your head and on a paper. So that's why
Mhm.
those notes are so good, right? If you're anxious by moving your body, then it just flows. If you're tired, take me to the tired and then the read. How
Yeah,
does that
so
work, that part?
I think when we're tired and this I personally believe that the cell phone needs to be put away when we're tired. Just because this is just me personally. Pick up a book that might inspire you or help you just no, like this is okay, okay? Because 25 years ago, not all of us had these cell phones. And what all of this electronics, at least for in my eyes, I have to spend at least 2 hours away from any electronics or computers. It definitely gives you a more relaxed state of feeling. And it really like just helps relax you, so there's so many different tactics that we can use to help relax our brains and just get us there. It just for me, that's what it does.
Yeah, perfect. I love it's simple. It's simple, yet we don't do it.
Right.
and
Yes.
and I love the part that you said regarding nature. Nature and just being outside, it's just
Hmm.
a shift. And when people are sitting at their desk for work a long time, just that change of environment. If you can't step outside, if you have a pet too, like I have two dogs and you
Yes.
mentioned your dog, just even just touching this other life being and like
Yes.
connecting with them, taking care of and of a pet or an animal also is a huge
It is.
release for that anxiety and all those emotions. They just are such They're
They're
just,
innocent and
oh,
vulnerable
they're
creatures,
so
and it's our
beautiful.
job to take care of them as best as we
Yes.
can. You know, they're beautiful creatures, and I
Yeah.
think I have 2 French bulldogs, and then I have a few felines around our place, and, it's funny, they're annoying, but, you God love them. They're funnier than they can really just change your emotion in a moment.
Yes, it is. It's like you're thinking outwardly rather than thinking about yourself when you have pet. And the same when you have young children, especially, that's the same thing too. That happens. You kind of have to
Yes.
redirect your the way of that you think. Is there
Mhm.
something I have not asked you, Naomi, that you want to make sure that we share with the audience before we tell them how they can get a hold of you?
Oh my gosh. No, I thank you so much for having me on here. This has been an amazing conversation. I've really enjoyed, our talk and getting to know you and the show and everything that you're doing. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
No, I'm glad you came on. And so now let's tell them how they can get a hold of you. And I'll make sure to add those notes below and what kind of offerings you have on your website, if you can
Oh
share
my
that.
gosh. Yeah. So I do a lot of different works and talk on a lot of different topics. You can go to naomilriley.com and learn about all of my different works. And please reach out. Our contact information is there. I'd love to hear from you. I love this. And please, take the book, and all your listeners are more than welcome to read the book, and hopefully it will inspire you to just let go of the anxiety that you might have in your life.
Perfect. And just for everybody listening, just a reminder, even just if you're listening to this podcast, a reminder to all of us to don't text and drive and
Yes.
to be
Yes.
focused on what you're doing and not be distracted because you are here to tell the story, Naomi. I did
Yeah.
have a friend that her mom did die by a distracted driver. So I'm
Yes.
grateful that you are here to
Thank
share it
you.
and be an advocate for
Yeah.
that as well.
Thank you so much. And I guess I do have to say, anyone is welcome to go to textpledge.us. Under teacher resources, you are able to look up all of our educational resources for our youth and get them get them implemented into your school today. Great teams of people have put these together just to make sure that this is a movement that goes forward. And the app, of course, you're going to have the crisis line. So
Perfect. Thank you again,
thank you
Naomi.
so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you. Thank you again so much for choosing to listen today. I hope that you can take away a few nuggets from today's episode that can bring you comfort in your times of grief. If so, it would mean so much to me if you would rate and comment on this episode. And if you feel inspired in some way to share it with someone who may need to hear this, please do so. Also, if you or someone you know has a story of grief and gratitude that should be shared so that others can be inspired as well, please reach out to me. And thanks once again for tuning in to Grief, Gratitude, and the Gray in Between podcast. Have a beautiful day.